My name is Meik Wiking and I am the CEO of the Happiness Research Institute in Copenhagen. And I'm also the author of the little book of Lykke and the little book of Hygge. So Lykke is the Danish word for happiness. So my job is to understand why some people are happier than others. And what I've done for the past 5 years is to travel around the world and see what do happy people have in common and what can we learn from people around the world. And that's what's going into the book. I know that people think that at the Happiness Research Institute we have a room full of puppies and a room full of ice cream. That's not the case, unfortunately. Our job is to have a scientific approach to happiness and try and understand, basically it's 3 questions we try to solve. So first, how can we measure happiness? Secondly, why are some people happier than others? And thirdly, how can we improve quality of life? So once we answer those 3 questions, I can retire. It's obviously difficult to measure happiness because you might have one understanding of what happiness is, I have another one. So we acknowledge that happiness is a wide umbrella term and we look at different elements of happiness. We look both at whether people have pleasure in their life, but we also look at whether people have purpose in their life. Then ideally what we do is we follow large groups of people over time to see how changes in their life circumstances impact different dimensions of well-being. When people get married, if people get divorced, when people have kids, when they get promoted, if they get fired, how do these changes impact happiness in different dimensions? And we can see that there are 6 factors that explain the majority of the difference in happiness levels at a country and at a people or personal level. And those 6 factors are like classic ones you would imagine, like wealth. We can see that richer people are on average happier. We can also see that health matters, that's the second one. Obviously if you are sick you become less happy, but we can also see there's the reverse relationship, that happiness keeps people healthy. So there's a lower mortality rate. Then we can see that freedom matters, being able to choose the life we want, having the freedom to marry whoever we want, as long as that other person says yes, of course, matters. And that's why we can also see that self-employed people are on average happier than people who are regularly employed. We can see that trust matters, trust in each other, trust in our neighbors, trust in society, trust in our politicians. Then we can see, and I think this is quite interesting, that kindness is also of importance. Kindness triggers happiness, both on a short-term and a long-term basis. We can see that when you engage in random acts of kindness, it triggers something we call helper's high. We have a reward center in the center of our brain, which triggers when we do things that are good for the survival of our species. So when we eat good food, when we have sex, it triggers, but it also triggers when we help each other out, because cooperation is good for the survival of the species, and that's why we feel good by doing good. And then the 6th one is probably the most important one, and that's our relationships. So do we have somebody in our lives we can rely on in times of need? Is there somebody we can share our thoughts and worries and feelings and hopes and dreams with? That seems to be the best predictor of happiness levels. So we look at how can we implement these 6 factors into our lives. What are people doing right throughout the world that seem to have an impact on those 6 factors, and how can we all get a little bit happier by using those?